Today we're going over the Little Heroes Tempest Trials event in Fire Emblem Heroes. This accompanies the 2025 Kids banner. If you score the maximum 50,000 points, you can earn up to 42 orbs, 11,000 feathers, and 80 sacred coins. This month we have Ephraima 4 divine codes, as well as Norma 6 divine codes because of Emblem Erica. For sacred seals, we have Attack and Speed Snag and Slick Fighter. The reward unit is Young Xander to round out the Royal Norian siblings. You can get a 4-star 5-star copy. We'll talk about Xander more in just a bit. The first Sacred Seal for this event is Attack and Speed Snag 3. If the user is involved in a movement assist, inflict -6 attack and speed on the closest foes within 4 spaces. Snag isn't the best B skill, but it's not a terrible Sacred Seal option. You ideally want to use it on units with extra actions such as the new Young Leo. That way you can benefit from said debuffs after moving an ally. Now if you don't have that kind of ability, then Snag can be used on position-based support such as units who smite an ally forward. You do need to be somewhat near the enemy for Snag's debuffs to hit. Now one benefit of Snag is that you can debuff during the middle of the phase. That can have some value to get around penalty cleansing enemies. If you'd like to stack Attack and Speed Snag with its Defense and Res version, you can get that from Festival Takumi from last year. Next we have Slick Fighter 3. This armor skill is a quick riposte with a much easier HP condition to utilize, and it neutralizes stat debuffs, which is really good on the naturally high BST of armor units. Slick Fighter is generally great for units who can neutralize the enemy's field buffs. That way you get very consistent stats throughout the fight. Now, Marnie is probably the best example since her weapon gives the low status to her team. This is why she likes the tier 4 version. We now have Wily and Slick Fighter Sacred Seals. If you want a follow-up, then either of those is fine depending on what other effects your unit already has. Not from the Tempest Trials, but by doing the 93rd Squad Assault, you can get Squad Ace CO this month. That grants plus 5 HP and plus 3 attack and resistance. This stat booster is the same as Squad Ace BU and CE. If you wanted a third copy, then here you go.
I am the Crown Prince of Nor. I cannot tolerate insolence. I must always be an example for my siblings. I can never show cowardice.
Young Xander is our last Norian sibling to talk about. This is his second girl form, and it's sort of an update on his OG from back in year 1. And if you haven't noticed, all the kids take on their original classes, minus the Corins. Xander will be a Sword Cavalier, and for stats he has 41 HP, 48 attack, 30 speed, 48 defense, and 23 res. He has attack and res super boons, but it is his defense stat that is very impressive. Xander is the highest defense Sword Cavalier in the game by a mile. His 48 attack is also right behind the top. Like a lot of melee counts, Xander is sacrificing resistance. He also isn't the fastest, but for dealing with certain physical matchups, Xander can put his speed to good use. Xander's Sword of Dusk is a 16-man weapon. For foes within 3 rows or 3 columns, they are inflicted with -5 attack, speed, and defense. Their extra special charging effects are neutralized, and they will take a free follow-up attack from Xander's team. For himself, Sword of Dusk grants plus 3 attack and enables Near Trace 4 type Kanto. This is Kanto remaining +1 with a minimum of Kanto 2. Now for above 25% HP, Xander gets bonus stats equal to the number of foes within 3 rows or 3 columns times 3. If there are 3 enemies in range, he gets a max of +9 to all stats. In addition, Xander gets true damage and flat damage reduction equal to X% of his defense stat. If the enemy has more than half health, X is 25%, otherwise X is 15%. Funnily, Sword of Dusk is very similar to Spring Long Ku's Inheritable Axe. It has the same Crux with defensive tempo effect. Xander, however, gets the actual free follow-up effect that the Crux skills normally have. Now Xander's stat boost is the same as his siblings. The +14 total stats is taken into account the -5 debuffs from the Crux. Xander also gets Near Trace 4 Kanto, which is very solid for a free unit. He can go into attack, then retreat. Now for his main combat perk, Xander gets defense scaling, true damage, and flat damage reduction. The above 50% enemy HP condition is kind of similar to his legendary ult. 25% defense scaling is higher than normal, but if you fight weak enemies, then 15% scaling is under that 20% standard. Generally, Xander's going to get the full 25%. Pretty solid for one of the highest defense cows in the game. The rest of Xander's kit is pretty good. Ignis will be tough to charge, but it will do a ton of damage if you get it off. Attack and Defense Clash 3 is becoming extremely common, but Clash 3 is a good budget skill, so we'll take it. That's up to +8 attack and defense if you move 3 spaces. Now Xander's new free-to-play offering is Low Attack and Defense 3. -3 attack and defense in combat, and you neutralize the foe's attack and defense field buffs. I'm pretty sure this is the first low B skill in a free-to-play unit. Low has kind of been out of popularity for a while, even though its buff neutralization effect is good. Unfortunately, the tier 4 lows just aren't that crazy compared to other things. It was also recently made into an echo skill. For a budget build, it's not fancy, but lulls are perfectly good for extra stat advantages. Xander actually has a very good base kit to start off. Now if you plan to merge Xander, the neutral nature gives him +1 HP, attack and defense. Sounds good. If you would like to go with the attack super boon, you can go for max damage. Now Xander isn't really the best magical tank, but his weapon does grant bonus res. If you want, you can use that super boon as well. Now for free-to-play Sword Cavalier comparisons, our last option was Kent, who released close to 3 years ago. Kent is a higher speed unit. He's the fastest sword cav for the non-5 stars. Now, I know there are some different skills available, but if you wanted a faster red physical damage Cavalier, then Halloween Yarn is pretty good. You can even get an extra copy from this month's Ephemera Combat Manuals. Focusing back on Young Xander, he is by far the highest attack and defense option for this small class type. Hilariously, the next highest defense sword cav is OG Xander, and he even has a similar speed and res after all the Dragon Flowers. Now, unless he gets a resplendent outfit, old Xander is behind in max BST potential. You can see his younger self has 11 more attack out of the box. Now, if you wanted a more balanced out, low 30 speed unit, Bertram is an option. He has a lot of points in HP, but still decent defense. Ares and Seth are faster units, but they are the higher defense options among the free-to-play group. Basically, Young Xander has a chokehold on the high attack and defense archetype if that's what you're looking for. We do not get a lot of non-5-star sword cavs, so he may hold on to that record for quite a bit. With his base kit, Young Xander has a very simple playstyle. He has a free follow-up, and he stacks a lot of true damage and flat DR thanks to his high defense stat. Xander gets a good amount of stats and has defensive tempo that could stop a breath type caught on effect, but you kinda want regular guard just to deny the regular charging. You can use the Sacred Seal, though Xander can also double up on attack and defense clash. For more stats, you can use Rouse attack and defense for self-buffing. Xander would need to be solo for that. For other budget skills, Xander may want Bonfire over Ignis. You could proc Bonfire in 1 round if you use Heavy Blade. For an A and B skills, it's pretty tough to beat Clash and Low. If you wanted, you could change to Speed or Res variants, but I don't think most people are going to do that. Now, if you want to use Xander more for support, then you can modify his kit for things like Attack and Defense Link, Holner Fortifies, Drive Buffs, or perhaps the new Attack and Speed Snag Sacred Seal. His Crux debuff works from across the map, so it's a great chance to work with snag or field buffing skills. Now, you could also stack 2 space drive buffs like Closer Distant Defense if you're going to stick close to Xander. Now, it's not budget, but this month's Ephemera has Fallen Gustav. He has Attack and Defense Catch 4, Near Trace, and Attack Smoke 4. Xander already has Clash and a better Kanto effect, so he really just uses the tier 4 smoke. If he fights, Xander can debuff attack and buff defense and res. He also gets a follow-up denial status. All of these will stack with Sword of Dust, so if you don't know what to do with your Ephemera, then not a bad use. For actual premium skills, Xander can run the Emblem Sigurd kit slower cavs can't get away from, Attack and Defense Excel plus Momentum. He can get more true damage, more flat DR, and Momentum's instant cooldown can help trigger Bonfire or even Ignis. Now, Fatal Smoke would be good too, but you can't take everything at once. While more flat damage reduction is great, Xander would love some percent damage reduction. For regular percent DR, you can use Gambit with a high cooldown special, or Guard 4, which would be nice with defensive tempo. There is also Brash Assault 4, and maybe Potent could activate since Xander doesn't completely abandon speed. In general, Xander can use his free follow-up to cancel out 1 follow-up denial effect. He then can outspeed the low speed tanks thanks to Sword of Dust's extra speed advantages. Now, if you want to get really wacky, Xander is the perfect benefactor of Frozen. The more defense you have, the higher chance this 30 base speed unit can outspeed enemies. Going back to the percent DR topic, if you want unpierceable percent damage reduction, you can use defensive special. Not really great since Xander doesn't have slaying or a Lagu's friend type skill unless you find certain supports. In terms of initiating, Haze Slice is the best option. You get 40% damage reduction on all incoming hits, and stacking that with all of the flat DR from Excel and Sword of Dust will be pretty nasty. Now, instead of no quarter for DR piercing, you can also use Assault Force. It uses the higher of speed or defense for true damage scaling, so Xander could get 45% defense true damage scaling. Now, the main downside of Haze Slice is that the percent DR is player phase only. Xander couldn't retreat with Kanto, but he's not going to be the sturdiest unit on the enemy phase. You could use that Attack Smoke 4 we talked about earlier. Now, if you wanted a mixed phase set, you could use Fortifications and Brave Alphonse's kit, including Reopening and Breath of Life. Reopening might only give 10% defense scaling, but it does give guard. You could also just use Gambit's percent DR instead. Now, since this is Xander, Fortification's distant counter effect would be fun. He's not the best magical fighter, but at least Xander can block out some arrows or daggers. Sadly, until Cavaliers get an unpierceable percent DR skill usable on the enemy phase, tanking is kinda just risky against modern threats. To end with some other playstyle ideas, Flow Guard 4 would give Xander a lot of special protection on initiations. You get Scout, Defensive Tempo, and Guard. Now if you prefer a more support playstyle, then Xander can move allies around and trigger skills like Link, Snag, or the newer Detect. There is also Shadow Shift or Smite since he has Kanto. Because Crux can debuff foes from across the map, you can run a Rally plus Ruse setup. If you wanted some team buffs, then Insight Hone is very nice. This also goes for the tier 4 wave skills. Overall, decent Tempest Trials. Snag is definitely better off as a Sacred Seal, but I wouldn't say it's the highest on the upgrade priority. If you like army units though, then Slick Fighter is a good upgrade. The debuff neutralization alone is quite good. As for Young Xander, he has extremely good attack and defense stats for a Cavalier and is the highest defense sword cav by quite a mile. The 5 stars don't even come close. Xander is definitely more physical matchup focused, but he doesn't abandon speed or res if you want to mess around with those. Again, he's a perfect frozen abuser. For his weapon, Sword of Dust is excellent. Support Crux debuff, great Kanto, and a good amount of stats with true damage and flat DR. Xander can do fine in terms of combat, but defensive cows are really desperate for Pierce with % DR. If you want to get more damage out of Xander, you can use him with the new Elm Erica ring with Brave hits and then stack a bunch of true damage skills. Xander has quite a lot of things you can choose from depending on what you want. I wouldn't call him a busted unit, but Young Xander is a very solid freebie. If you want to mess around with a high attack and defense Cavalier, then he has a nice weapon to start with. That'll be it for this Tempest Trials video. Let me know your thoughts on Xander, and good luck farming all the rewards. Another reminder that something seems to be happening later in April for Fire Emblem's anniversary. If you wanted some fodder for Xander, such as Emblem Sigurd, then maybe save up these Tempest Trials orbs. That's all I have for now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.